Welcome to the Dogs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Josh All alone, your host, coming to you today, breaking down my top 10 wide receivers that I want the Browns to target in the NFL draft in April. Just a little over a month away. Here we go. We're really ramping up for draft season, and wide receiver is a massive need that the Browns have to address at some point before things kick off in September for 2025. So I'm going to go through my top 10 wide receivers, the rookies in this draft that I would love to see the Browns come away with at least one, if not two, please two of these guys. That would be awesome for this team. And then there will be some honorable mentions, and we'll discuss some other names as well. So it won't just be 10 guys only in this episode, but I will break it down into who the top 10 guys are that I like for the Cleveland Browns this year. Before I dive into it, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe on YouTube, tap the notification bell so you don't miss anything new coming this draft season. Free agency kicked off last week, and it has been a snooze fest. If you're a Browns fan, there's been very little done. So we will be coming at you guys heavy and often with draft content. I've got a podcast episode, interview lined up next week with Brian Bosarge from Deep Fried Draft. If you followed us for years in the past, every year we do a draft episode with Brian. He's a great NFL draft analyst and just an awesome dude. He's a fun guy, fun conversation every time we have him on. Really looking forward to that episode. So like I mentioned, the Browns really do need to address the wide receiver position on the roster. Currently, we've talked about this in episodes past. I feel like we're beating a dead horse, but if you're new to the show or this is the first time tuning in or you missed some of those episodes, whatever, I'm just going to go over it one more time. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 1. Currently, yes. Before I talk about what we're thinking about Jerry Jeudy, I don't want to take anything away from what he did in 2024. It was a phenomenal season. He was the 6th leading receiver in terms of yards in the NFL last year. Just absolutely exploded. Turned out to be a great trade that the Browns made ahead of last season. Now, the thing with Jerry Jeudy that we need to caution ourselves on, Jerry Jeudy currently, as his career stands, is a 5th-year breakout who is technically right now just a 1-year wonder. He needs to do it again. We have to see that sort of performance, that sort of capabilities on the field more. It was consistent last year, consistent enough, but I need to see it consistent for years now. So can he stack a couple years together here? Can he have another solid season in 2025? That's kind of what we need to see before we can just crown him a bona fide superstar elite wide receiver 1 for the Cleveland Browns. But, last year everything was great. So we're coming off a solid season. Hopes are high. Everything's pointing in the right direction. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves with Jeudy, just need to see it again. And after him, you got Cedric Tillman. So now you're dropping off from a guy who is currently a 1-year wonder. Great year. Don't get me wrong. Awesome season. To your wide receiver 2, who is going to be a 3rd-year player now, who has had 3 great games, whatever you want to call it, in 2 seasons in the NFL. That usually doesn't bode well for the longevity of a career at that position whenever you're already 2 full seasons into your career and you flashed 3 times. I mean, you think about Elijah Moore had a run of 5 or 6 games where it looked like, hey, this guy could be a legit receiving weapon as a rookie, and that was all he ever showed over the first 2 years, and now over the first 4 years of his career, moving from New York to Cleveland. But he's a free agent, so we're not even going to be talking about Elijah Moore as part of this roster. So that's Jeudy. That's Tillman, who, by the way, missed the last 7 games of the season with a concussion. That's a little bit concerning to me that you missed that many games with a concussion. And I get it. I know people would say, hey, the Browns are totally out of it. They're not playing for anything. Why rush him back out there? Because he's a 24-year-old receiver who needs to continue to develop his skill set at the NFL level. That's why if he's clear from concussion protocol, you get his ass back out on the field. The Browns did not. So tells me there was maybe some lingering effects to that concussion that they still weren't quite comfortable with. And that is concerning after almost 2 months since, the injury happened for him. After that, Guys, we're talking about we have one other wide receiver on the current roster who's ever caught an NFL touchdown pass, and that is David Bell. And I don't think any of us are pounding the table for David Bell to be one of the key receivers on the Browns offense. So it's David Bell, Jamari Thrash, who I think caught 7 passes last year as a rookie, 5th-round pick. And then it's Michael Woods, who was a 6th-round pick a few years back, had the Achilles injury, came back and all that stuff. But we're not talking about any sort of high-end talent after Jerry Jeudy in any way, shape, or form. Cedric Tillman, yes, we have our hopes. But like Jeudy, need to see more before we can feel comfortable having just those two. Because then if you get an injury to Jeudy or Tillman again, who you throwing the ball to? So this team has got to address the wide receiver position. And the best way to do it, I know Andrew Berry likes to trade for receivers, and at some point here, there's still, possibilities that he could swing a trade for Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers, Chris Olave from the Saints are two guys that have been thrown around and kind of talked about. Reports are that the Browns are in discussions with the 49ers about a trade. No idea if they're productive discussions, if there's any real interest, or if it was just a, hey, we called and checked, and yeah, that price was way too high, so we're out. I don't know. But I know that the door with Andrew Berry is always open for a trade if things change down the road, as far as maybe what the 49ers are thinking about, what they are willing to accept. Things change, and that gives you a new situation at some point. But as it stands right now while I'm recording this, we have got to nail some picks in the draft, because that's the only other way we're going to get any sort of top-end receiving talent on this roster. So what I want to do is I want to talk through the players on my list here, and we're going to go kind of round by round, pick by pick for the Browns. So I want to talk about the receivers I would love to see the Browns could potentially come away with at or around pick 33. And then we'll go to the 3rd round, and we'll talk about guys who could be available around that 67 pick. We'll drop to the bottom of the 3rd, talk about the 94 pick, and then, we'll move into the 4th round. And then there's a couple guys that I want to mention in the 6th. So we'll kind of go that route. And then at the end of the episode, I will arrange the guys that I talk about here in the order that I would prefer to see them come to the Browns. So my top 10, my actual ranking, will be at the end of the episode. So before I dive into the first couple players here, I just want to say, I want to look at the obvious things, of course, for each of these players. I want to see what their production was like in college. Of course, the most recent is the biggest factor. So we'll look at 2024, targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, stats, all that kind of thing. But I want to look at some of the deeper metrics too, because these things are very important to understand for wide receivers. We're going to look at their YAC numbers, yards after catch. How many yards did that player gain after he caught the reception? Average depth of target, ADOT. So how far on average down the field are you catching the pass? Yards per route run. That's a number where it's kind of hard to fully understand or explain it, but just know that 2.5 yards per route run is about, that's kind of the cutoff. So you want to look at guys who have about a 2.5, somewhere around a 2.5 or high. Anything higher than 2.5 is great. Anything close to 2.5 is okay, not bad, but if it's much lower than 2.5, which we do have one or two of those guys in the list here, we'll talk about. And then, let's see. I think that's really everything. We'll talk about contested catch rates. We'll see how many drops these guys had in college, all that kind of stuff. NFL draft profiles, and then I've got a good write-up primer from Fantasy Pros. Obviously, they're talking about these prospects from a fantasy perspective, but everything that they break down and look at really does talk about what this player's skill set can be on the NFL field just for a team in general. So we'll break down those things as well. So let's dive in here. First name I will just toss out there. Obviously, Teteroa McMillan from Arizona would be awesome. We would love to have him. He's only going to be available if the Browns trade back from number 2 down to, 4, 5, 6, something like that, and totally pass taking a quarterback at the top of the draft. Browns have to take quarterback because we currently have none that can actually play football at a high level and at any rate. So I'm not going to discuss Tet McMillan T-Mac's going to be a stud. Some team's going to be very lucky to get him in the first round, but it's not going to be the Browns. So then we kind of drop down here. The first name I want to talk about, again, this is not currently in the order that I like them. This is more in the order of how they're currently being projected to fall in the NFL draft. So the first receiver, according to NFL Mock Draft Database, to go will be Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. He is projected at pick 25 around there. So this would be maybe he slides out of the first round. Nobody picks him on night one. The Browns would be sitting there with the option to pick him up at pick 33. Maybe if they really like him after evaluations, they trade up back into the first round on night one and take him. But we'll talk about Matthew Golden here. So he's 5'11", 191 pounds, 21 years old. Stats for 2024, 83 targets, 58 receptions, 987 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, I said maybe at 33 we'll see, but in all reality, I do believe he's going to go in the first round. He blazed the 40, which always helps these kind of fringe first-round guys get into the first round. He had a 4.29 in the 40, so that was really good for him. NFL Draft Profile says that Matthew Golden works all 3 levels of the field with similar consistency and productivity. His route running needs refinement, but he does a decent job of altering tempo and separating at breakpoints. Golden has the ability to play all 3 receiver spots. He also has the agility and body control to turn near misses into highlight catches. Focus drops still pepper his play, but he's a willing participant in traffic and took command of contested catches with better physicality and catch strength in 2024. Golden's starting level traits and big leap forward as a go-to playmaker have him primed to become a productive catchmaker with the potential to develop into a wide receiver 1 in the future. So my main issue, that's all well and good. My main issue with Matthew Golden is that most of his production this past season came during the college football playoffs. And I'll just say I understand. Those are the best teams. Those are the 4 best teams they played. Obviously, that was the playoff, and he had his highest production, but 40, I'm not just talking about a little bit. 42% of his yardage came over those 4 games. He had 8 catches for 162 yards against Georgia, 7 for 149 against Arizona State. Big games there. The other 2 playoff games actually weren't that big at all. He never had a 100-yard game during the regular season. A little concerning. 11 of his 16 games, he had 3 or fewer catches. So was not a go-to guy, was not a hyper-targeted high-volume receiver. Did not demand a lot of targets in 11 out of 16 games. So for me personally, I prefer a guy who dominated his college target market share and was the dude versus just being a dude on the team. He had just a 2.10 yards per route run. Remember, I said 2.5 is what we're looking for. This would be considered lower. This is, when I say close to 2.5, 2.4 and up would be kind of, I would take it, but 2.1, that's low for me. 303 yards after the catch, just 31% of his yards came after the catch, 5.2 yards after catch per reception. That was on the lower end of this entire draft class coming in. His ADOT was 13.5, so that's cool. That's a nice ADOT, and he had 4 drops on the season with a 61.1% contested catch rate. So we like that those higher contested catch rates. All right, so let's look at the wide receiver rookie primer from Fantasy Pros, Matthew Golden. Now, these stats are all from receivers this past season who had a minimum of 50 targets. I mentioned before, yards per route run was 94th overall in last year's wide receiver group. Not good. PFF receiving grade, 69th. So definitely not on the higher end of that. The write-up, Matthew Golden is a smooth route runner. His varied release package and crisp moves at the top of his stem allow him to gain consistent, easy separation. Golden can gear down easily and drop his hips. He profiles as a possession receiver at the next level. With his route running and fluid ability to change directions, he can carve up defenses in the short and intermediate areas of the field. Now, he isn't a ball winner at the catch point or a monster after the catch, which we talked about. His lack of play strength can highlight his shortcomings. Golden has only 5.6 yards after the catch per reception in college and a contested catch rate under 40% in 2 of his 3 seasons. Okay, so they're kind of going back and looking at the college profile as a whole. Golden can get deep, but he doesn't have elite deep speed, which maybe the NFL draft or the NFL combine he proved that wrong. I think this was written before the combine and all those final numbers took place. When he is utilized downfield, he exhibits strong ball tracking and a quick return to top speed with double moves. So, like I said, I'll break down like 1 through 10, my top 10 at the end of this. Matthew Golden is on that list, but you can kind of tell from the way I'm talking, he's not number one. Number one is the guy I'm going to talk about next. But just to put a bow here on Matthew Golden, I think, if the Browns were to somehow come away with him, obviously we would be excited. He's a big playmaking receiver, and he's got potential to grow into a legitimate wide receiver one. That's how the NFL feels about him. I look at his production from last year, some of those deeper metrics, and he's not at the top of my list because of those things. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is Matthew Golden a bona fide first-round talent, or is he somebody that if he's at 33, maybe the Browns could kick the tires on, but if there's somebody else available, somebody else on this list, maybe they go that direction instead. All right, so the next wide receiver according to NFL Mock Draft Database in the NFL draft order would be Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, projected at pick 28. So this is another, maybe he slips out of the first round, out of night 1, into night 2. The Browns take him at 33, or maybe he's sitting there around that pick 28, and the Browns say, hey, that's only 5 spots away. Let's trade up. Let's get him. Let's lock him in. And for me, I would say yes, yes, and more hell yes. Give me Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 200 pounds, 22 years old. In 2024, 106 targets, 81 receptions, 1,011 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He had 476 yards after the catch. That was 47% of his production came after the catch. 5.9 yards after catch per reception. That's a little lower, but still not bad because the total yak yardage was very nice. And he had a 2.51 yards per route run. Egbuka had just a 7.9 ADOT, so his average depth of target was not too far down the field. He did run 81% of his snaps out of the slot, so he is primarily a slot receiver. He had 5 drops on the season with a 59.1% contested catch rate. His NFL draft profile: fluid athlete with good and quality ball skills who works primarily from the slot. Egbuka runs his routes with tempo and pace. He does a nice job of influencing coverage when needed. He lacks the explosiveness to race past the coverage and is a little tight in his hips getting in and out of breaks. Egbuka's baseball background shows up with his laser-focused ball tracking and ability to make sudden adjustments to bring throws in for a safe landing. He was an outfielder in baseball. He's not elusive or sudden after the catch, but is competitive and can squeeze out additional yardage. Egbuka projects as an early starter at slot for teams running heavy amounts of 3 wide receiver sets. I love Emeka Egbuka's football IQ. Obviously, you guys see the Sports Illustrated covers in the background here. I'm an Ohio State fan, Ohio State alum. I love my Buckeyes, but it's not like it's, a bad team that I'm being a homer for. They're the national champions. They have some of the best players in the nation coming into the NFL right now this season. So Emeka Egbuka is one of those. And, for me, his ceiling, if he really truly hits in the NFL, like if he reaches the pinnacle of what his abilities are, you're looking at a guy who could be like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, and what Amon-Ra St. Brown offers and provides for the Detroit Lions, that toughness, that reliability. He's not a burner down the sideline. He's not the big, massive, physical receiver, but he is a damn good possession slot receiver. Get him the ball in space and he can make things happen. That's exactly what I see Egbuka becoming. Lance Zierlein at NFL says he comps into Jackson Smith and Jigba, another Ohio State Buckeye. But even if Egbuka only reaches his floor, I feel like you've got yourself maybe like a Jarvis Landry light type of player, and that would even be what the Browns need with Judy and Tillman kind of on the outside, and you let Egbuka just be the dominator in the slot with David Njoku also roaming the middle of the field. That would be really, really awesome to see in Cleveland. So over to Fantasy Pros break down the primer for Emeka Egbuka. His yards per route run in 2024 ranked 38th in the class. His receiving grade was 19th. Sorry, not in the class, in the entire country. His yards after catch were 16th. Now, if you go, let's see. You look at the career, 73.2% out of the slot, and he did deal with an ankle injury in 2023 that required a tightrope procedure in December. Okay, but it obviously didn't affect him here in 24. He had a great season. Emeka Egbuka's 2023 and early 2024 seasons were impacted by his ankle injury and subsequent tightrope procedure. And Egbuka still produced in 2024, but this has to be mentioned when discussing his analytics and overall performance. Egbuka has underrated speed. While he is not a burner by any stretch of the imagination, he can get downfield and create yak with his legs. I don't foresee Egbuka moving or making a living off of yak ability in its purest form or his skills as a field stretcher, but he does offer some value in these areas. Now, Egbuka is not elite yak threat or tackle breaker. Since 2022, he never eclipsed 7.1 yards after the catch per reception or 10 missed tackles in any season. Now, that's not to say he is a zero in either category, but these traits are more of a thin sliver of icing on the cake of his skill set. Man, Fantasy Pros, you guys do some nice write-ups here. Continuing on, Egbuka is a route running wizard. This is what I like about him. He has the necessary strength, speed, release package, and savvy to win from the perimeter, but that's not where you want him playing from the most of his snaps. Egbuka plays through contact well in his routes while offering the hand fighting and upper body strength to deal with physical corners. Egbuka has the quick feet to dice up corners in the short and intermediate areas of the field. His fluid hips, bend, and laser sharp feet allow him to carve up zone coverage with slants, crossers, routes, deep overs, and more. Egbuka's hands are quite good. While he has a 5.5% drop rate in college, I think his 54.3 contested catch rate is more indicative of his trusty mitts. Emeka Egbuka would be excellent on the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion. So that's a guy that I'm keeping my eye on. After the Browns take their quarterback, damn it, you guys are taking a quarterback at 2. After they take their quarterback at 2, I will be watching the rest of night 1 to see who falls out of the first round, and the top guy on my list is Emeka Egbuka. Hey, Browns fans, we just want to remind you guys, go check out the Living for We podcast. Living for We, keep your head up, addresses the troubles of gun violence and offers solutions for those who want to better their community. You'll hear from Amir and Drew, 2 black men who picked up a gun as kids because they felt they had no other choice. Andre Taylor, a community leader stepping into schools to break the cycle. Walter Patton, founder of Ghetto Therapy, bringing mental health support straight into the neighborhood. These are real stories, real struggles, and real solutions. Living for We is an award-winning podcast from Idea Stream Public Media, part of the Connecting the Dots Between Race and Health initiative. This season, host Maureen Harris-Taylor and her new co-host Maisha Watkins, executive director of the Cleveland Peacemakers, bring you stories from the front lines, victims, survivors, and those fighting for change. New episodes drop every Tuesday, and they started last month on February 11th. Listen to Living for We wherever you get your podcast, or watch the video version on IdeaStream's YouTube channel. Learn more at ideastream.com/podcast/living-for-we. Okay, let's talk about the last player, according to NFL Mock Draft Database, projected to go in the first round of the NFL Draft. Luther Burden III. Out of Missouri, he is projected at 29. So again, maybe he slips out. The Browns could get him at 33, or they trade up a few spots back into the first to grab Luther Burden. Burden is 6 foot, 206 pounds, 21 years old. He had 81 targets for 61 receptions, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. A lot of sixes in there. 373 yards after the catch. That was 55% of his production. We're going to talk a lot about yak with Luther Burden. 6.1 yards after catch per reception. He had a 2.32 yards per route run, so a little bit lower than that, 2.5. He had a 9.1 ADOT, so under 10. His average depth of target we'll talk about it. He's kind of a gadget player. Not used down the field, ran 85% of his routes from the slot. He had 3 drops. He had a 54.5 contested catch rate. Now, this is a cool stat that I did like about Luther Burden. He had 30 missed tackles forced. Now, we just talked about that with Egbuka, how he had never had more than 10 missed tackles forced in a season. Burden had 30 this past year. Most in the entire draft class. Like I said, 10 for Egbuka and just 8 for Matthew Golden. So this Burden was making guys miss left and right. So this is a get him in space, get the ball in his hands in space, let him do his work, and get the yak kind of player. NFL Draft Profile says Burden is a former 5-star recruit who offers 5-star athleticism and playmaking ability. Burden is a natural on the field with above average speed and exciting ball skills to win at a high rate. He takes snaps off and short circuits routes if he's not the primary option, but he can separate and succeed on all 3 levels when it's his time. Missouri exploited Burden's yards after catch talent with a barrage of short throws, but NFL teams are much more likely to diversify his usage, activating his complete skill set and big play potential. The production against top teams was uneven at times, but so was Missouri's quarterback play. Burden checks several priority boxes that typically foreshadow an impressive NFL career. Big red flag for me, taking plays off. We've seen that from other players in the NFL, and it hampers, hinders, slows, just kind of derails your NFL development and I'm not saying that would translate, but again, you've already seen it in college, so it is a concern for me anyway, that, if you're not playing every snap 100% or, totally focused when the ball's not coming your way, that speaks more to your character than maybe other people believe. But I did see, the draft profile had an NFL scout on there saying that I just feel like he got bored with Missouri's offense. The quarterback play wasn't very good, all that kind of stuff. But hey, the Browns had a historically bad offense last year and the worst quarterback play I've ever seen. So in that type of situation, is Burden going to be taking plays off if he's on that, in the NFL in that type of situation, or is he going to be locked in, focused, trying to get better, trying to help his team? Those are questions that come up. So from Fantasy Pros, Luther Burden III in 2024 among wide receivers with a minimum of 50 targets, his yards per route run 58th, not great. Receiving grade 35th, okay. Yak per reception 79th, not great. Missed tackles forced, like I talked about, he had 30, first overall. Luther Burden is a quick twitch underneath slot weapon for offenses. Over the last 2 seasons, he ran 81 to 85% of his routes from the slot. Burden is a dynamic and fun player to watch. With the ball in his hands, he can create yak and yards for himself without needing perfectly blocked screenplays. Burden's usage at Missouri was somewhat gimmicky. He was utilized in bunch formations, in motion, with handoffs, with rub routes a ton to create easy releases for him. And they say, yes, the aim for Missouri was to get the ball in his hands in every way possible, but that doesn't explain away the usage profile. As a true route runner, Burden is more of a projection than a finished product. With a ton of usage coming via scheme touches, the reps where Burden was asked to go out there and route guys up were more limited. During his more traditional slot snaps, he was fed a bevy of ins, outs, and slot fades. You will occasionally see a seam shot in there for good measure. Now, while Burden might turn out to be a strong route runner because of his electric movement skills, that is only a projection. Stating he is a strong route runner versus the hope he can become a good route runner is a very different conversation. Entering the NFL, most coordinators should expect to integrate him into the offense with some gadgetry. Maybe he hits the ground running as a route technician, but there's an equally strong chance he doesn't. And he has to mature in this area with on-the-job training in the NFL. Kind of goes back to the work ethic thing. Are you willing to put in the work and the focus to get where you need to be? Burden plays larger than his size would suggest at the catch point. He has that my ball mentality and that dog in him. Burden has 55.8% contested catch rate over the last 2 seasons, and this skill should help him in the red zone and if he experiences more muddy catch points in the NFL as he matures as a route runner. Burden is an accomplished punt returner. Now that's nice. That's something the Browns could use. He can offer an NFL team value on special teams. In 2022, he was 5th in the SEC, 32nd nationally in punt return yards, and ranked 8th in punt return average among 66 players who had at least 12 punt returns. So it is nice to see that, a guy like Luther Burden, and there's another guy on this list that I like better than Burden, who can do this as well. But he can provide you 2 positions that you desperately need help at, and it is wide receiver, and it's in the return game. So that is a nice addition, a nice little benefit, bonus, if you will, to his profile. But that's Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Again, guys, drop it in the comments. Let me know what you think about Burden. And go back, what do you think about Ibuka and Matthew Golden, the 3 wide receivers currently projected, other than Tedero McMillan, who we did not discuss because we were not going to get him, but the other 3 receivers who are currently projected to go in the first round. All right, so I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but I'm wearing my dog check shirt because I'm looking for what we just talked about, what was just mentioned in the Luther Burden profile. I'm looking for dog mentality receivers on the field. Do you have the dog in you? And for me, the next guy I'm going to talk about, the first guy I want to talk about outside of the first round for the Browns, I believe does have the dog in him. And this is a guy, if you've watched the show the last couple of weeks or month or so, I'm high on him. I love him. I want him. I want him in orange and brown. and that is Cleveland Joseph Harris III, or since he's the third, they call him Trey. Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Now, he's projected at pick 53 right now, so somewhere between 33 and 67. Like if the Browns wanted to trade back a little bit, get a little extra capital, and still take Trey Harris based on the projection, okay, I would 100% take him at 33. I think he's that good. I believe in him that much that I don't think 33 is too high to take Trey Harris. I think we'll talk about the profile and stuff, but for me, I just feel like this is a dude who just has future NFL alpha written all over his game. 6'2", 205 pounds, and he's a little bit older than the other guys as a prospect. He's 23. He had a 4.5 4.40, not the fastest time, but if you watch the tape with Trey Harris, you know that his game speed is just fine. NFL draft profile, size, speed, wideout who returned to school in 2024 and improved his game heading into this year's draft. He's primarily a first and third level target, mixing a barrage of hitches and slants with go routes and posts. Now, he's fast enough to win over the top and talented with the ball in his hands to stretch short throws into longer yardage. His route running and contested catch success both took an upturn, but they still need work at the pro level. Of greater concern might be a second consecutive season of time missed due to injury. That is the red flag with Trey Harris. Harris might be capable of expanding his route tree a bit, but he looks locked in as an X receiver with big game potential and a future home as a wide receiver too. Now in 2024, his stats, 76 targets, 60 receptions, 1,030 yards, and 7 touchdowns. To go to what the draft profile mentioned with the injury thing, that's 60 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns in just 8 games. Now he missed, 4 or 5 games there with a hip and groin injury last year. He ran 86% of his snaps out wide, 13% in the slot. 462 yards after the catch. That was 45% of his production. 7.7 yards after the catch per reception. Now, here's my favorite stat, though, okay? You guys have talked about it with each player so far. You remember I said 2.5 yards per route run is what I'm looking for. That's what we want to see. Anything over that is really, really nice. And sometimes you see a guy who's around 3 or maybe even a little over 3. And that's really impressive. The second best receiver in this entire draft class is a guy named Jamal Pritchett from Southern Alabama, had a 3.34. Now, obviously, the way I'm talking about this, Trey Harris was clearly number 1 in the class, but, this other guy, Pritchett, had a 3.34. So what did Trey Harris have? 3.4, 3.5? How about 5.12 yards per route run? I don't think I've ever seen a receiver even above 4 yards per route run, especially somebody from a Power 4 conference playing against a lot of quality talent on the opposing defenses. And yet Trey Harris, 5.12 yards per route run. Totally insane. He had a 12 ADOT, which is nice. 5 drops on the year, 61.5% contested catch rate. Now, remember whenever I harped earlier in the episode on Matthew Golden for having 11 out of his 16 games with 3 catches or fewer? How about this? In Trey Harris's 8 games that he played, he had 6 games out of those 8 where he had 7 catches or more, and 3 of those games with over 10 catches. 5 games were over 100 yards and 3 over 175, and he even had 1 game over 200. His best game overall, not like total statistically, but his best game, most impressive, to me anyway, was against LSU. Tough opponent. He had 7 catches for 102 yards and a touchdown. And what I like also about Trey Harris, he's not just like a one-year wonder or like a fifth-year college breakout, which is kind of what we saw with Xavier Legette last year. Harris had 935 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2022. That was his 3rd season in college. He had 985 and 8 touchdowns last year, and now this year 1,030 and 7. He averaged 129 yards per game, so if he had played all 12 games, he would have been on pace for 1,545 yards. That I believe, I guess I should look at the stat, but I believe that would have clearly, easily led the entire nation in receiving last year. So I love Trey Harris, if you couldn't tell. I think he's, like I said, he's going to become a high-level wide receiver in the NFL within that rookie contract. So let's go over and look at Fantasy Pros breakdown of Trey Harris. In 2024, yards per route run easily was 1st in the nation. PFF receiving grade, 4th. Yards per route run versus man coverage, 1st. Yards after catch per reception, 19th. And if you go back to 2023, yards per route run, 9th. PFF receiving grade, 6th. Yards per route run versus man coverage, 18th. So he was good last year. And then all he did was get even better this year coming into the NFL. The write-up says Trey Harris is a nasty route runner. He has a deep release package with pacing variations and a bevy of in-route nuance. Harris plays 4D chess while corners are still playing checkers. He invites indecision into corners' heads every snap. He gears down well at the top of his stem and can drop his hips easily. Harris has numerous moments in his film where he will set up corners for a later move. He will threaten deep or burn them on a double move when the play isn't designed to come his way. Hey, that's a little different than Luther Burden. This guy actually put some effort in on plays that he's not getting the ball. That rep made the defender guard against getting burned deep as Harris snapped off a hitch route with razor-sharp precision. Harris is not a burner, and this was before the NFL draft, and they were totally right. He likely has 4.5 40-yard dash speed. I worry if he has enough raw speed to stack corners on go routes consistently, but that doesn't mean he is slow, nor that he can't get free downfield with his requisite juice and route running. Harris is the postmaster general. He excels at using his big frame, route running, and speed to burn corners on post deep. Harris offers yak upside in his blend of speed and play strength. He has the necessary lower and upper body strength to run through tacklers, stiff arm them, or shed them easily when they aim high. I'm telling you, this guy is a beast. The highlight reel catches from Harris where he skies above a defender or adjusts to a to a back shoulder ball are glorious. Harris is a ball winner at the catch point with contested catch rates north of 60% in 2 of his last 4 collegiate seasons. I'd be totally on board, totally cool if the Browns decided to pull the trigger on Trey Harris at pick 33. No need to trade back, no need to mess around. Just take him, put him in there, let him do his thing. All right, up next, let's talk about the guy projected at 55 by NFL Mock Draft Database, and that is Alec Ayamanor from Stanford. Like I said, projected at 55, so somewhere between 33 and 67 for the Browns. Ayamanor is 6'2", 206 pounds, 21 years old. He ran a 4.44 40-yard dash, 109 targets, 63 receptions, 831 yards, and 6 touchdowns in 2024. 244 yards after the catch, just 29% of his production, and just a 3.2 yards after catch per reception. He also had a very low yards per route run at 1.9, so he's under 2, which kind of moves him off of my board, but we'll see where he falls out in my top 10 at the end of this episode. He had a 14.2 ADOT, and he had 6 drops on the season. Now, the NFL draft write-up or draft profile says that Ayamanor is a Canadian-born wide receiver. Canadian-born, there you go, Kenny Mack. Thriller, you too. Canadian-born wide receiver with pro size and traits who is still in the early stages of his development. Ayamanor lacks suddenness and burst from his break points, leading to heavier contested catch totals, but he does a nice job with stemming coverage out of corner routes and slants. He has good build-up speed to work vertically and the strength to handle possession targets from the slot, but his ball tracking and catch technique need a major upgrade. Ayamanor has a good work ethic and the upside to continue developing. He could become a much more consistent player within 3 years. Now, I like Ayamanor, but I'm just not over the moon about him like I am with the guys like Trey Harris and Emeka Egbuka. Okay, over on Fantasy Pros, they got yards per route run was 137th in the nation. That 1.9 is very low. PFF receiving grade 84th, ADOT 50th, like just not the best numbers. Right up, Alec Ayamanor adds many of the little details to his routes that you look for with strong route runners. He has some variance in his release packages. He has good pacing and bend in his routes against zone coverage. He has a quick first step off the line at the top of his stem with comebacks and curls. Now, he still has some areas in his route running he can improve upon with leverage and timing. Ayamanor will telegraph his breaks at the top of his stem at times. He can also create more late separation with corners by selling his vertical push better or utilizing leverage better with in and out breaking routes. Now, overall, he has a solid down-to-down attack plan against the secondaries. The little nuances added to his game could help take it to the next level. Ayamanor is not a dynamic yak threat. He can produce some yak with his physicality and quick feet, but it's not going to be a hallmark of his game in the NFL. He has solid hands. Despite the 8.7 drop rate over the last 2 seasons, Ayamanor does lose some 50-50 balls in those situations or after physical hits from corners. Now, with his play strength flashing in other areas of his game, this is something he can improve upon in the NFL. Ayamanor separates well late against zone coverage. He sinks his hips well and gears down quickly for a receiver that's his size. Ayamanor also will flash the occasional special play as he adjusts to targets outside of his frame with some one-handed snags or back shoulder grabs. I have seen some highlights. The dude can make some plays. And again, he's a nice receiver, but he's just not at the top of my list for the Browns. But again, we'll see where he falls in my top 10 when we get there. Okay, the next receiver based on NFL Mock Draft Database is Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, projected at pick 65. So this would be right there around the Browns' first pick in the third round at 67. Jaden Higgins, I like this kid a lot. 6'4", 214 pounds, 22 years old, ran a 4.47 40-yard dash. NFL draft profile. Big inside, outside, wideout with modest athletic attributes, but outstanding ball skills that make him a projectable NFL prospect. Higgins needs a more limited route tree, but can operate on all three levels in the right scheme. He's smooth but physical in his routes and does a nice job of creating pockets of separation with force and strength. He has mismatched qualities from the slot with body control and a catch radius that make him a menace on jump balls downfield. He won't outrun cornerbacks and is nothing special after the catch, but his size, ball skills, and competitiveness create a profile of production as a future contributor in three wide receiver sets. In 2024, Jaden Higgins had 129 targets, 87 receptions, 1,185 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Excellent production. He had about a 70-30 split out wide to the slot. He 330 yards after the catch, so just 28%. Like they said, not a big yak threat. Just 3.8 yards after the catch per reception. That's pretty low. He did have a 2.66 yards per route run, so that is very nice. That is a solid number. We like that. 12.1 ADOT, that's nice. And only 2 drops. Very nice as well. 58.3% contested catch rate. Like I said, another guy here, he's got consistent production, kind of like I talked about with Trey Harris. 7 of his 13 games with 7 or more catches. 5 of the 13 games, he had 100 more yards. Not the big blow-up games like we saw with Harris with the 175. And, he had like 3 of those, I think, and 1 game over 200. We didn't see that with Jaden Higgins, but he also had a teammate who had a lot of production as well, so could have contributed to it. But he's still, Jaden Higgins, solid, reliable production for his team this past season. Okay, moving over into Fantasy Pros to look at what they have to say about Jaden Higgins. Yards per route run, he ranked 27th in the nation. PFF receiving grade, first in the nation. Their write-up says Jaden Higgins is a physical X wide receiver. His play strength shows up in his routes and against press coverage. He has no issues playing through contact and dealing with physical corners. It shows up consistently at the catch point, as he had a 2.2% drop rate or lower in each of the last 3 seasons and a 55.6 contested catch rate over his entire collegiate career. Dog check. This is one of those guys. Higgins excels in the short intermediate areas of the field with surprisingly nimble footwork for his size. He gets open at will on slants and out routes where his footwork shines. Uses his size to box out corners, and I wouldn't be surprised if he were to transition to a big slot role in the NFL. If a guy like, I love this part, if Sean Payton drafts him, don't be surprised if Payton turns Jaden Higgins into Michael Thomas 2.0. Higgins has a decent second gear, but I question his long speed. I wonder if in the NFL, does he have the raw speed to stack corners on the perimeter downfield consistently? Higgins has plenty of route nuance in the short and intermediate routes, but he has to continue to add tricks to the bag as a downfield receiver. He struggles to get separation on go routes, but he wasn't asked to run them much at Iowa State. Higgins also needs to sell the vertical push on comebacks and curls more consistently. Sometimes he'll get lax here and there, and it leaves corners glued to him after his route break. He has nice body control in the air and some nice back shoulder grabs, especially in the red zone. His strong hands and ability above the rim should help him on the perimeter and in the red zone in the NFL. Higgins is not a dynamic yak threat. He looks more like an athletic tight end after the catch. He can provide some yak, though, with his physicality and tackle-breaking skills. So they comp him developmental Michael Thomas, like they mentioned before, especially if like somebody like Sean Payton were to draft him there in Denver. For me, I think that the floor, you're looking at Cedric Tillman. He's got a lot of the traits and a lot of the things that Cedric Tillman came to the NFL with, but I definitely like Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. Browns fans, we talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after. Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order, and that code can be used over and over, so you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DAWGS.
What's up, Browns fans? If you're watching this, you already know me as a host of your favorite Browns podcast, but what you may not know about me is that I'm also a licensed realtor here in the state of Ohio. So if you're local to Tuscarawas County or Stark County, or you just need help finding a trusted agent in your area, shoot me an email at agentblakereniker@gmail.com to see how I can help you reach your real estate goals.
Now, the guy that I like even a little more than Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State is the aforementioned teammate from Iowa State, Jalen Knoll. If you guys have watched the show, you know I'm a Jalen Knoll guy. He's projected at pick 71, so the Browns could target this guy with their 67th pick, the first pick they have there early in the third round. Jalen Knoll, 5'10", 194 pounds, 22 years old, so he's on a little bit on the smaller side. But I don't think that's not deterring me one bit. He's still got pretty decent size at 5'10", almost 200 pounds. Like that's very nice. That's not Tez Johnson where you're 5'10", 154. Please, never going to work. Jalen Knoll, 4.39 40-yard dash, had a very good combine. He also had, if I remember correctly, I don't have this in my notes, I think he did 23 reps on the bench press, which was definitely first among all the wide receivers. So the dude is strong. He had the third highest combine score of all the receivers. He scored a 91 overall. NFL draft profile. Knoll's blend of receiving and return talent, this is the other guy I was talking about, who can also contribute very much in the return game. Could carry more sway with teams given the league's new kickoff rules. Back in 2024, he's primarily a slot receiver, but has enough size and speed to kick outside if you need him to. His routes can be a little unfocused, but that's correctable with coaching. What can't be coached is his consistent play speed. He can accelerate and separate from turns and stems and tends to uncover on cross-country routes. The catch focus can be a little inconsistent, but he is willing to mix it up in the middle of the field and is a natural after the ball in his hands. Knoll's upside and punt kick return value could make him a day 2 pick with the potential to develop into a starter. In 2024, I talked about Jaden Higgins. His production was great. Probably could have been better if it weren't for this guy. Jalen Knoll had 119 targets, 80 receptions, 1,193 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So he had more catches he had 7 fewer catches, but he had more yards and 1 less touchdown than his teammate Jaden Higgins. So his route usage, he's the flip version of Jaden Higgins, who was 70-30 out wide to the slot. Knoll was 70-30 slot to out wide. 337 yards after the catch, 28%. 4.2 yards after the catch per reception. So those are kind of lower. He had a 2.62 yards per route run. Nice number. 12.2 ADOT. Nice number. 4 drops. 52% contested catch. So per Fantasy Pros, yards per route run for Jalen Knoll, 29th in the nation. PFF receiving grade was 26th in the nation. The write-up. Jalen Knoll is an impressive route runner. He had subtle jab steps, pacing shakeups, and head fakes to his routes. Knoll was primarily a slot receiver in college, 73% out of the slot. But he also has the skills to win from the perimeter. Knoll can also win downfield. He has solid ball tracking skills. Knoll attacks defenders with a varied release package. He has smooth, easy acceleration with the raw speed to nail big plays downfield. He can pull away from corners and routes and the open field. And I did see a nice highlight, and maybe I'll post it here on social media at some point. I mean, he's going right down the middle of the field, deep. He's got both safeties converging on him. He's right in the middle of these two guys, and somehow he comes down with the catch in the middle of both these defenders, and he's just blazing. But it was pretty impressive. Just shows everything that they're talking about here. Knoll plays through contact well. He has the upper body strength and obviously with the 23 reps on the bench, and the route skills to beat physical corners and press coverage. Knoll flashed an increasingly dependable set of hands in college with a 4.8% drop rate in his final season and a 52% contested catch rate. Those are great numbers. His play strength shows up at the catch point as he has more than a few snags with multiple defenders competing with him for the ball, like I just talked about. He attacks the ball outside of his frame with aggressive hands. So Jalen Knoll, where he's going to be available in the draft for the Browns, is a guy that I think could fit very well with his route running, with his play speed, with his reliability, everything that everything basically they wanted Elijah Moore to be. Jalen Knoll can be that, but he can be a bigger version of what they hoped that Elijah Moore could turn into. So Jalen Knoll is definitely a guy that I'm impressed with and a guy that I would love to see playing for the Browns in 2025. All right, we're down to our last two breakdowns here, guys, so just hang with me. We are getting there. The next guy up on my list, Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State. He is projected at pick 73, so this would be a early first round, pick 67 kind of guy for the Browns to be looking at. Now, the note here with Jalen Royals, he is not from a Power 4 conference, okay? He played in the Mountain West, so who knows? He might not even make Andrew Berry's board based on where he's projected to go. We talked about that in the last mock draft episode. Berry has only ever drafted 3 players in 5 years who did not come from a Power 4 conference. But Jalen Royals could be the 4th. We'll see. He is 6 foot, 205 pounds, 22 years old. Now, Royals, kind of like Harris, had the injury thing going on, played just 7 games in 2024. He had a season-ending foot injury in October. And if you kind of pair that along with the conference that he played in, maybe Andrew Berry is not interested at all in Jalen Royals. But in those 7 games, Royals piled up 81 targets, 55 receptions, 839 yards, and 6 touchdowns. If you go back a year, 2023, when he played the full season, 71 catches, 1,080 yards, and 15 touchdowns. So he has shown that when he's out there for the full year, the production is impressive. NFL Draft Profile says skilled and instinctive. Royals might lack the desired explosiveness, but he makes up for it with his body control and his overall feel for the game. He has good size and is keenly aware of defenders around him, which allows him to adjust routes and improve his chances on contested catches. He is a decent route runner, but doesn't have the short area foot quickness and burst to open wide windows for his quarterback. He's excellent as a zone beater and uses plus body control and play strength to bring in catches in traffic. Royals is a smooth athlete who can play inside or outside and is best suited for an offense that will value him as a possession target over the first 2 levels of the field. So Jalen Royals had 436 yards after the catch. That was 52% of his production. 7.9 yards after the catch per reception. He had a 9.4 ADOT. He had a 3.00 yards per route run, so very nice. Second highest on my list anyway, behind Trey Harris at 5.12. That's still insane to me. But 3 yards per route run, that'll catch my attention every time. That was the 6th highest among draft eligible receivers, and the other, guys in there behind Trey Harris were smaller conference guys anyway. He had just 3 drops last year with a 53.3% contested catch rate. So Jalen Royals over on Fantasy Pros, yards per route run, 30th in the country, PFF receiving grade 69th in the country. Let's see. Jalen Royals, the right up here, is a fluid mover. He makes everything look easy from his in-route adjustments to his accelerating and deceleration. His run after the catch ability jumps out immediately from his film. As soon as he has the ball in his hands, he is off to the races. Royals gets up to top speed almost instantly. His physical strength is easy to see in several ways. Royals is a load to bring down. He had 17 missed tackles forced last year with only 55 receptions. Remember, we talked about Luther Burden with the 30 missed tackles forced. Then you got like Emeka Egbuka with 10. This guy had 17. That's very impressive. He cuts through defenders as a runner, effortlessly shedding tacklers. He plays well through contact with many routes, but he does have some issues with physical corners. Royals has a good understanding of using his physical skills to his benefit, especially on slants and other in-breaking routes. With go routes, he didn't flash as a deep release package tool belt attempting to run by corners. Now, he has the speed to do so, but he'll need more than that in the NFL. In Mobile, at the Reese's Senior Bowl, Royals was less than 100%. He was dealing with a soft tissue injury. So again, we got the injury thing going on with the Royals. Missed the part of the season with the was it the foot? Did I say the foot injury? And now he's got the soft tissue, probably a hamstring type thing going on. So his speed wasn't on full display. But still, while he was at the Senior Bowl, his release packages and route running were against better competition, and he consistently won his reps during the week with route running, nuance, and his footwork. So I know guys came away from the Senior Bowl very impressed with Jalen Royals because they knew he was not 100%. They knew he was dealing with some sort of injury, and yet he was still able to beat his one-on-ones during the week in practice because of the route running and everything. So it's like, wow, if this guy is at full strength and health, he could be very lethal. So they say it was fantastic to see him do all of that at less than 100% and against stronger competition at the cornerback position. Finally, Royals' body control and hands are impressive. Utah State's quarterback play was not exactly stellar, so he had to adjust to plenty of passes outside of his frame. He aggressively attacks the ball away from his frame. He did have a drop rate of 5.2% or higher in each of his final 2 seasons, but they say they're not overly concerned about it. Plenty of his drops were of the concentration variety or just adjusting to difficult ball placement. So for where he's going, Jalen Royals is a guy I would not hate to see come to the Browns, but we'll see if the injury thing and the team and conference that he played in kind of moves him off of the board for Andrew Berry. All right, everybody, the last guy that we're going to dive into here on the episode before I go through my top 10 list of receivers for the Browns is Xavier Restrepo, the wide receiver out of Miami. Restrepo projected at 88, so this would be between 67 and 94 for the Browns. So now we're talking toward the end of the 3rd round that the Browns could maybe sit there, and if he falls to them, cool. Maybe they trade up a few spots to get him, but they are at 94, and he's currently projected 88. So Xavier Restrepo, 5'10", 209 pounds, 22 years old. He had 95 targets for 69 receptions, 1,127 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And yes, he was catching passes from future most likely number 1 overall pick Cam Ward. He ran 91% of his routes from the slot. So this is a slot-specific player. 503 yards after the catch, that was 45% of his production. 7.3 yards after the catch per reception. 11.3 ADOTs, so that's a nice number for a slot receiver. 2.47 yards per route run, just a little bit under, just a hair under that 2.5, which I'm not concerned about that. Just 2 drops on the season. He had a 61.5% contested catch rate. Great analytics there. NFL Draft Profile says Restrepo is a feisty slot-only target who has maximized his talent and honed his craft. Restrepo is a route chef who reeks of urgency and plays much faster than the stopwatch is likely to time him. His footwork, leverage, and burst allowed a consistent separation from man coverage on the college level, but contested catches await him on the next level. His instincts, blitz recognition, talent to scramble open when plays break down will make him a favorite of quarterbacks and play callers. Subpar length and average measurables could create some hesitation for NFL evaluators, but the play and football demeanor feel translatable as a future starting slot. So this is another guy, ding, ding, right here. He's got the dog in him. I do feel like that is true. So I like Xavier Restrepo. I don't love him. I like him. If the Browns got the chance at the end of the 3rd round, or even if he's there and they trade back a little bit into that 4th round early and they're still able to pick him up, I wouldn't hate that one bit. Obviously, I would like having Restrepo more if we've already drafted his quarterback, Cam Ward, at number 2, but since he's about 99.9% going to the Tennessee Titans, don't think that's going to happen. We'll go over to Fantasy Pros, here in a second, read what they have to say. My fear with drafting Xavier Restrepo is that if things don't go well, things, which they haven't much for wide receivers drafted by Andrew Berry, I'm afraid we could be drafting David Bell all over again. So now if he's the second wide receiver we take, like we took one of these other guys earlier on, we took a Trey Harris, we took a Jaden Higgins or something earlier on, cool. I'd be okay with grabbing the slot receiver in Restrepo, but we better be getting one of those other guys early first, in my opinion. All right, so over to Fantasy Pros. Yards per route run, 42nd in the country. PFF receiving grade, 15th in the country. So top 15 receiver on receiving grade. That's nice. So they're right up. Xavier Restrepo is a scrappy spark plug. He can be a tone setter for an offense with his energy. He's always willing to stick his nose in a run play and hit a guy. Again, I said it. He's got that dog. He'll chip for his quarterback during scramble drills. The edge and energy he plays with can be felt by just watching his film. And I watched a lot of Cam Ward film, so obviously I saw a lot of Xavier Restrepo. He's definitely a hard-nosed, tough player. I love seeing that. Restrepo has nice body control. He can adjust to plenty of errant throws outside of his frame. He can play above the rim at some points. It's nothing to see Restrepo make a tough catch in traffic. He plays with no fear in traffic, securing targets with defenders bearing down on him at the catch point. He had a 61.5% contested catch rate just this past year. Now, he has a nice second gear in the open field. When he hits the pedal to the metal, he can leave corners in the dust. Don't underestimate his short area quickness. He'll cross guys over off the line, breaking ankles and creating early separation. He is a solid yak threat, ranking 28th in yak per reception and 10th in yak last season. He has solid route pacing and understands where to sit it down against zone coverage. I think, again, I would not be mad if the Browns drafted Xavier Restrepo. I would be a little less thrilled if they took him early in the third. And some of these other guys that I've already talked about were still on the board and they bypassed Jalen Knoll to take Xavier Restrepo. I would say, what are we doing? But, if we miss out on those other guys, we don't get Ibuka. We don't get Knoll. We feel like we really need a solid, reliable guy who can come in and develop into that at the slot position for the team. Okay, grab Restrepo at the end of the third, early fourth if you need to, see where, kind of the board's going. Is there a run on receivers? But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of what I'd be happy or not happy with them, investing certain capital into Restrepo. All right, so let's dive into the top 10 ranking for me personally on these wide receivers that I would like to see come to the Cleveland Browns and what order I would prefer them, if they're available or not for the Browns. So number 1 overall is Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State, and that would be using that pick 33. He is currently projected, I believe it was 28. Number 2 on my list, you guys know it's Trey Harris, Cleveland Joseph Harris III out of Ole Miss. That would be around pick 33 or trade back a little bit further into the second round if they want to take him, but a second round wide receiver. Jalen Knoll is number 3 for me out of Iowa State. He is around that pick 67 for the Browns. Number 4 on my list, Knoll's teammate, Iowa State, Jaden Higgins, would also be around that 67 pick in the third round for the Browns. Number 5 on my list, back up to the first, top of the second round, Matthew Golden out of Texas, around that pick 33. I think he's like 25, maybe he's currently projected. Number 6 on my list, Jalen Royals. He would be around, or out of Utah State, he would be around that 67, that first pick in the third round for the Browns. Number 7, Luther Burden III, another first round potential slip to 33, wide receiver out of Missouri. Number 8 on my list, Xavier Restrepo, the wide receiver out of Miami, and he would be at the the back end of the third round, maybe even top end of the fourth, depending on how the draft board starts to fall. Number 9 is Elik Ayamanor, and he would be a trade back in the second round, pick up some draft capital, and take him somewhere in the mid to late second would be my opinion. And number 10, because I only broke down 9 guys on this episode, but number 10 for me, I just had him in my last mock draft, would be Savion Williams, the wide receiver out of TCU, and he would be around the back end of that third round, pick 94 for the Browns. A couple honorable mentions, and maybe I'll do some segments and episodes on some more of these guys later into the draft process. We'll see how things go. But there's guys like Jack Besh out of TCU. He's projected at pick 64. Torrey Horton is a guy that I'm interested to dive more into and talk about, so maybe I'll do an episode on these guys anyway. Out of Colorado State, I believe, projected at 118. And then there's Jimmy Horn Jr. out of Colorado at pick 231. So now we're talking 7th round guys. Horton, obviously a 6th round guy. And then there's Nick Nash out of San Jose State at 244. So another 7th rounder. So there are guys around each of the Browns draft picks at wide receiver that are interesting. But again, top 10, Ibuka, Trey Harris, Jalen Knoll, Jaden Higgins, Matthew Golden, Jalen Royals, Luther Burden III, Xavier Restrepo, Alec Ayamanor, and Savion Williams. Let me know what you guys think. That was a big breakdown on wide receivers, and I want to know who is your favorite wide receiver target for the Browns based on their production profile, their combine performance, just their overall body of work, who they are, what type of player they are, and where they're projected to go in the draft. It's easy to just say, yeah, my top 5 are the top 5 guys to go in the first or second round. That's easy to do, but for me, I like to put a lot more value into where you can get these guys. That's why I've got Jalen Knoll. You can get him at the top of the 3rd round. Instead of spending 33 on a receiver, get a guy like Jalen Knoll. That's why he's number 3 on my list. I love what he can offer the Browns for that 3rd round pick over a guy like Luther Burden, who you would have to take at 33. So that's how I broke this down. Again, drop in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I love doing these draft episodes for you guys. And I'll try to break down, we'll try to do running backs. We'll try to do some tight ends. Maybe we'll get on the defensive side of the ball as well. But offense is just such a major need for the Browns right now in this draft that is the side of the ball we're going to focus a lot of our attention on. So again, like the video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell. And if you guys want more Dogs content, you want to join our awesome Dogs Browns fan community, it is jointhedogs.com, a great online community of just all things Browns. We're always in there talking, and right now is so much fun because everybody's got opinions on the draft that they want to throw out there and get feedback on and talk about. And it is very much a constructive, positive group. Nobody's in there bashing anybody. If you throw out an idea that you think, hey, this might be kind of stupid, no one's going to call you a name and tell you you're dumb. If they don't agree, they'll just have an honest conversation with you about it. And that's what I love about it so much. There's no negative discourse in there. We don't agree on everything, but we respect each other. And that's why it's such a phenomenal online community of Browns fans. So that's at jointhedogs.com. Become an official Dog Pack member on our Patreon page. I'm going to wrap it up. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, all your thoughts, comments, feedback, questions, anything you want in the comments. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, best audience in the world. And until I see you guys in the next one, let's go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at The Dogs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is brought to you by Bawden Sports. Browns fans, Bawden Sports is your one-stop shop for all your athletic gear. Bawden started out perfecting and manufacturing the best balls in the business. Yeah, if that sounded dirty, that's more about your mind than my words. But hey, it's true. Baseballs, softballs, footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer balls, you name it, and Bawden has engineered the highest standard sports balls available. And now they offer more than just sports balls. If you got kids playing baseball or softball, Bawden has batting gloves and bats to go along with both game balls and training balls. If you're into basketball, Bawden makes basketball specifically for indoor or outdoor use. Heck, Bawden even has all the equipment you need for pickleball, which is one sport that I hear everyone is playing and yet I still never have. And I need to fix that soon. But don't miss the backyard games section of Bawden's website where you can order everything you need for this upcoming outdoor season. Pool balls, backyard volleyball nets, croquet, bocce, horseshoes, cornhole, and more. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order at Bawden Sports, BADEN sports.com/dogs, DAWGS, and use promo code DOGS when you check out. That's 10% off all the top quality sporting gear you need this season. BawdenSports.com/dogs.